Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Jon Uhler. This is Journey to Healing. We're doing a deep dive into the subject of boundaries. We've been in that subject, on that topic for an extended period of time, and we will continue to be in that series. Why? Because the vast majority of issues that cause us difficulties, that keep us from being able to move towards healing, that cause us to stumble on our journey to healing, have to do with boundaries. If you're in counseling, your counselor should be helping you with the issue with the topic of boundaries. Boundaries really have to do with your ability to state your preference, your ability to honor your intuition, be aware of what your intuition is, and it also presupposes that we have a conscience. There are really two categories of people that will seek out counseling. The first is the mandated group, and they tend to not have very much of a conscience. They're usually in there in one way or the other to avoid consequences. That's actually where you also find the pigs. And that's what we've been talking about previously. It's not a pejorative term. It comes out of Matthew 7, verse 6, where Jesus says, "Do not cast your pearls before swine." And we are looking at how to discern the difference between a pig versus other categories of people that are relatively safe to be dealing with and kind of working with. Okay, I encourage you to visit SurvivorSupport.net under podcasts to bring yourself up to where we are now, because we've just been looking at how to discern the difference between a prodigal versus a predator. If you're unfamiliar with the story of the prodigal son, I recommend you look at part 1 of this podcast by the time it is launched. Because it will then give you the context to understand that a prodigal is someone who does not intend to harm someone. They have harmed themselves, but in the story, he breaks the father's heart, but he doesn't take anything from him. The father gives him his inheritance, that was his. So relationally, things have been damaged, but there hasn't been it really hasn't been a lot of disrespect. There's been a minimizing of the value of the father from the son to the father, but there was never any mean or nasty things that were said. So for those people that end up getting blinded by their own foolishness, quite frankly, and there's a difference between a fool and foolishness. A fool will be foolish and will show forth foolishness, and actually modern psychology comes along, and that would be a white-collar psychopath. In the book of Romans, it talks about a reprobate mind. A fool and a reprobate, someone that has a reprobate mind, a dog, there's another term we looked at before. Those are all synonymous. Those are the kind of people we should not be dealing with. We will invite unproductive pain, unnecessary pain. That is not the cross that we are to bear, because that is not a cross. That is actually inviting problems on ourselves. We looked at the difference, for instance, between a healthy relationship. There's a little knapsacks. We talked about how the knapsacks represent, or they're called our load, and they represent us assuming or carrying what we should carry, and we're designed to carry that. We're never designed to do anything other than what is right, just, and fair. That has to do with relationships. And again, not to be confused with a burden. A burden is something that we should not carry by ourselves, but it is on us. And so we have to be able to discern the difference between what our responsibility is, what somebody else's responsibility is, and what life hands them. So on the other side of, or the previous podcast, part 1, we looked at what is the difference between a prodigal versus a predator by looking at the characteristics of a prodigal. Okay, so a prodigal is one that we can help. We need, once they've come to their senses, and we will be able to discern that by virtue of their humility. They will not justify and rationalize. They will be broken and contrite, and they won't repeat their behavior. Now, does that mean they'll be perfect? No, but there's a big difference between human foibles through faults and quirks versus willful disregard of someone. So the prodigal never even took a bite of the pods that he was feeding the pigs. Okay, so he still had ethics. Now, what other category of people that should we be able to deal with? So we talked about the dangers, and so the need to discern that if we end up interacting with someone, we'll bring up the chart again here. We should be moving upward. If we end up moving downward, the question is why? And here we'll invert the scale on the left-hand side, just so you can see what we're talking about. So we should be dealing with positive relationships. We should deal with people that want to grow. Okay, we actually showed that in the past. Here's our example. Let me find it again. Our example of a healthy relationship is one that each person accepts their responsibility. If somebody begins to get tired, we help them, but you notice we don't offload responsibility, and that is a healthy relationship. But if I'm dealing with an unhealthy relationship, somebody's taking me for a ride into the fog, and I am not to go into the fog. At the beginning of it, I can be willing to extend myself and begin to try to help. And so again, here's the beginning of it. You notice if they're going down to the left there from the reasonable relationship to the unreasonable, you can see there's a little patch of semi-fog. It's not very thick. Okay, so the question is, what happens if someone starts to show signs of selfishness? How do I discern that? Or what do I make of that? So it's important to, again, discern who am I dealing with. So we looked at prodigals. Okay, so a prodigal is very different than someone in the fog. Now, they have wandered into the fog, but they don't stay there, and they don't justify being in the fog. Who are some other people that, because we're called actually, especially if you come from a Christian perspective or a Judeo-Christian perspective, we're called to be patient. We're called to bear with one another's faults. People have rough edges. So how do I know who to deal with and who not to deal with? Well, one way of discerning that is, what are they about? Meaning, the rough edges they have, does it impact me? Are they overtly selfish? So one example, for instance, and most people are aware of this, is Oscar the Grouch. Remember Sesame Street? If you were to ask most people, by the way, on a scale of 1 to, not just 1 to 10, but also the minus, where would you put Oscar? You know what? I should ask you right now. How would you rate Oscar? Now, you might think, because I'm talking about the topic of pigs, that I would say, Oscar's a minus 10. He's so mean and nasty, and he's rude, and you know what? He's horrible. He's just a grouch. So therefore, he's a minus 10. No, he's not. Would you believe I would probably put him at about a minus 2? Now, he's kind of rude, but the question is, why is he rude? Does he walk around ruining people's day? Or does something else happen that triggers him? Let's watch.
Oscar.
Wait a minute.
I want to borrow your lid. It's a round lid.
Hey, you know what you're doing? You're letting in all the fresh air and sunshine. Boy, get a little rest around here? How'd you like me to snatch the roof off your house? Boy, I don't know all these...
Say, Oscar, have you seen Gordon?
You know something? That's 2 times in 2 minutes someone has pulled the lid off my trash can. You know something? One of these days, I'm gonna move out of your trash.
Oh,
then you're gonna be sorry. Boy, wait till I move out. You'll miss me, boy.
Okay, Oscar, I'm sorry.
Oh, Grouchy.
Who is kicking my can?
Oh, hi, Grouchy. And this is Grouchy. I wanted to play a game, but everybody's...
Play a game?
Busy. Could you play a game with me?
You kick my can and bother me and expect me to play a game with... I don't play games with little furry monsters and...
Grouchy, pretty please, with Sugar Aunt, would you play a game with me, please? Please?
Boy. Wait a minute. I just got an idea here.
I'm gonna play a little game with him that will make him never want to play with me again. Sonny,
No one wants to play a game.
yeah, I'll play a game with you here.
No.
Yeah.
You would play a game with
Yeah, I'm
Clover?
gonna play sounds for you.
Oh, boy, tell me what the game is.
Okay, I just said I'm gonna play sounds for you.
Play sounds for me, yes.
Yeah, and you tell me what it's a sound of.
And I tell you what it is the sound of, and then what?
Yeah.
Then what?
Then you guess.
Yeah?
And if you guess right, you
Yeah.
you win.
Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. Okay, I'm ready. I'm going to concentrate. You go ahead.
I'm gonna play the most horrible, yucky, terrible sounds that will hurt his ears, and he'll just go away and leave me alone forever.
There. So how would we describe Oscar the Grouch? At first we think, well, he's bad. Everybody just tolerates him. But the question is this: when does he show his face? When people bother him. So Oscar is not offensive. He's defensive. So, on the one hand, his tone, his pitch, all that, we could say, oh my. But if nobody ever knocked on his garbage can, would they ever experience Oscar? So really, as he says, stop knocking on my can. So Oscar would not be considered a pig. Oscar would be considered someone with rough edges, with quirks, but he's not offensive. He never gets out of his garbage can and goes into somebody else's garbage can. All right? So he's not overtly hurtful. And if you know the story of Oscar, there's a reason why he is that way. There often is, and that's why we're called to have patience. There's somebody else that you might know, and the question is, why would this gentleman be sort of like this with sweet little kids?
Oh, you've got to be pulling on my leg.
Hello? Cookies for sale.
Go away, I'm not home.
Yes you are. I heard you.
No, you didn't. This is a recording.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is. Watch this. Leave a message. Beep. Oh!
Goodbye, recorded message.
Anyway, so Gru, what's up with Gru? Gru wanted to be left alone. They came to his door, and he just wanted to be left alone. So again, is Gru a pig? Not really. He just wants to be left alone. Now, if you know anything about Gru, if you've watched the movie, what's his mother like? As a matter of fact, we're given an insight into Gru. We're given an insight also into Oscar the Grouch. They actually come from family dynamics that are very hurtful, and therefore they kind of have rough edges because they just want to be left alone. Think about Scrooge. We mentioned this last time. A great version of it is the Muppets movie, the Christmas story of Scrooge. And the question is this, if anybody, look, we even call people Scrooge. So the question is this: where would you rate Scrooge? So if we were to put him, let's get our little scale here again. If we were to, I'll find the scale. If we were to have our scale of 1 to 10, I'll just grab one of the pictures here. What number would you rate Scrooge? Bah humbug and all. He as a matter of fact, he's going to foreclose on people on Christmas Day. And we say, oh, he's heartless. But so what number would you give him? Would you be surprised that he probably gets a -2, or maybe he's inching into a 3? The one thing he has, his issue is he has no mercy. But the question is this: did Scrooge foreclose on somebody else's house that he had no right to? He didn't. Scrooge actually wanted to be left alone. And Scrooge went through the same things he was requiring of his employees. As a matter of fact, in the Muppet version of it, it's kind of cute. The office is cold. It's in old England. And so they ask, can we put on another coal on the fire? And he just gets all over them. But he's sitting in the same temperature. He's not in a warm, heated office. When he goes to his house, it's not extravagant. Granted, we would say, well, he's heartless. Well, okay, he's lacking mercy. But the question is this: was he offensive? Meaning, did he cross other people's boundaries? And ironically, he didn't. What did he do? He was a shrewd businessman, but he doesn't cheat anybody. He owns a bunch of property and people can't pay. So he has the right, technically, but we would all say, and hence the theme of the movie is what? That he awakens to the fact that he's in real trouble. If he were to die, being unmerciful, what would happen to him? It's not going to go well for him. So he's in trouble. We're not going to defend the fact that he's into the 3 category. So that's going to take some chipping. And as you know, as iron sharpens iron, and spur one another on to love and good works. The 3 angels, past, present, and future, did what to him? They were spurring him. He was in pain that whole time, but he never went and crossed anybody else's boundaries. So that's where discernment comes in. Most people would write him off, but God didn't write him off. God still had mercy. So God writes a pig off because a pig has morphed into a very different kind of person who is heartless, but has a lot of finesse. And we'll look at that in a moment. So people who else is eligible for grace? Who else wouldn't be a pig? People who have repetitive patterns and habits. We could say people that have addictions going on. They would fall into that. Some. Actually, the majority of them. But if they cross lines and they start stealing from other people, now they are morphing into a pig as well. Okay. People with compulsions and addictions who long for not being the way they are. That's the key. Do they dislike it? Do they, honestly, in their heart of hearts, do they not like being the way they are? That means their conscience is bothering them. Not because they are missing out on things, but they know that they are becoming less than what they could be as far as a person, and that they are hurting the hearts of those around them. Okay, who else is eligible for grace? And who is not a pig? People who are shame-based and genuinely have low self-esteem, who allow themselves to be doormats and people pleasers, those who strive to keep the peace with pigs. Okay, so they are not a pig. They're in the pig pen. And so we need to get them out of the pig pen. If you are with a pig, why are you with a pig? Now, again, I'm not advocating that you run right out and divorce the pig. I'm advocating what Jesus advocated. Do not be around them. So it's time to separate. That's the only way you're going to be able to bring peace to you and be able to discern what's true. Okay, so natural and logical consequences. Okay, so again, we're not talking about doormats and people pleasers, those who strive to keep things peaceful with a pig by placating and walking on eggshells. Okay, they are down in the pig pen, but they are not pigs. The pig will say that the person that's being hurt, the pig will say that that person has issues, but it's not true. The only issue is they're dealing with the pig. Those who make excuses for the way pigs take advantage of them and get dumped on, again, they're down in the pig pen, but they are not a pig. They are being hurt. They are acting out of fear, quite frankly. Okay, and they believe that the pig will actually transform and emerge from the fog, by the way. So if you keep giving and giving and giving to a pig, do you know what happens? The pig gets huge, right? They become a bigger selfish pig. You do not help them see the light. You only facilitate the growth of their ego. That's why the only answer is you have to risk the worst case scenario coming to pass. But the reality is, as things have been, so they are now. And if you don't make a change, so they will be in the future. Okay, the defining factor is the extent to which the person feels guilt. Okay, what happens when you ignore your intuition and you descend into the fog? I've mentioned this before. You will always end up paying the price and carrying unnecessary and excess baggage. You're going to carry their baggage. You're going to feel the pain of it. You're going to become a steward of what the other person is, and actually is not a steward. You're going to be dumped on. So you can't be a steward of really what God has entrusted to you. So all your time, effort, energy, and resources are going to go down the drain to this endless, self-entitled person. And that is not good stewardship. So since a truly loving person hopes the best and believes the best, so love believes and hopes all things. A truly loving person would never cause you harm or knowingly load you down and add stress. So if the person is okay seeing you get more and more buried under a pile, that is not a loving person. That is not a misguided person. That is a person who is taking advantage of you because they're not brain dead. And the question is, what keeps you in that relationship? If you've listened to past podcasts, you will know it is simply this: you are afraid. And that is not a loving relationship. Perfect love casts out all fear. So if you have a relationship where you fear saying no, where you fear establishing limits, where you fear disappointing the other person, where you fear letting go and giving up, meaning giving up control, placing responsibility back on that person, and where you are constrained, meaning you are inhibited because, as far as speaking the truth and setting boundaries for fear of what might happen, then again, you don't have an actual relationship. You are not treating the person, this may sound interesting, you are not honoring that person. Now, should you really honor a pig? Absolutely not. But one way of viewing it, because we tend to get hung up on, especially when it has to do with our own family members or our parents, people get confused when we should or shouldn't honor a parent. We should honor a parent when a parent is being a parent and they fit the criteria of being loving. That's different than again, foibles and rough edges. That's very, very different. But you can have a parent by genetics who is a pig, and therefore they are a fool, and Scripture commands us not to honor them, not to be around them. Why? Because you are going to be facilitating and making excuses for a pig. So there is a limit beyond which genetics counts. Jesus said he did not necessarily come to bring peace, but what? A sword. And sometimes it's going to be setting family members against one another. So we have to be able to risk speaking the truth in love. If you have a relationship that you cannot be honest, that is not a relationship, and that is not honoring of anyone. So you have to risk being honest. So the people that we are not talking about as far as pigs are those that have quirks, those that have foibles, those that have rough edges, but are not offensive as far as crossing boundaries. We're also not talking about prodigals. So prodigal, somebody with rough edges, somebody with human failings, they are not going to cross your boundaries. They're not going to willfully take advantage of you. That's still worth hanging in there for. But if you're dealing with someone who's morphing into a pig, you have to have increasing boundaries, and then you finally distance yourself. Do not get into the pig pen. Okay, so we can now transition into, once again, looking at what are the pigs? What are those people like? And again, the bottom line ultimately is they are people who are driven by ego. So they have allowed ego to grow. They've given themselves permission to be themselves, to do them. That's what is under the surface of all narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths. It is selfishness. And therefore, any of us could become one if we get off the straight and narrow and we start allowing, like a snowball to grow, we start allowing our ego to grow. The first kind of category you're going to run into which can cause still all sorts of pain, but it's a little bit easier to spot, is the unsophisticated. We'll call it unsophisticated narcissist. What does that look like? Well, they're pretty easy to see. As a matter of fact, they have no problem even singing about it. So we're going back, as a matter of fact, previous podcast, we looked at or heard a song from Mac Davis and also Kenny Rogers. We're going to let them tell us what is a simple or a non-sophisticated sociopath or narcissist like.
Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way. I can't wait to look in the mirror, 'cause I get better looking each day. To know me is to love me. I must be a hell of a man. Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble, but I'm doing the best that I can. I used to have a girlfriend, but I guess she just couldn't compete with all these love-starved women who keep clamoring at my feet. I probably could find me another, but I guess they're all in awe of me. Well, who cares? I never get lonesome, 'cause I treasure my own company. Oh, everybody, come on. Oh, Lord, it's hard to be humble. Everybody, when you're perfect in every way. Can't wait to look in the mirror. I can't wait to look in the mirror. I get better looking. I get better looking each day. To know me is to what? To know me is to love me. Must be a hell of a man. I must be a hell of a man. Oh Lord, it's hard. Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble. We're doing the best that we can.
Ladies, if you have a guy in your life who actually takes that song seriously, right? If that brought somebody to mind, you got a pig on your hands. Now, it's easy to spot them, okay? But I'm telling you, they'll take you into the fog. You're going to end up being hurt. Now, just look at how many people sing that song, as a matter of fact. So that's an example of an unsophisticated narcissist. But I'll tell you what, he's a pig. And if you deal with, so ask somebody what they think about that song. If they like it, then give them room. So we will continue to look at, and we're going to transition little by little into looking at kind of the more dangerous kind. All of them are dangerous, but the kinds that will not show you up front who they are, and that will cause a lot of damage. So we will look at that on the next edition of Journey to Healing.
You've been listening to Journey to Healing, sponsored by SurvivorSupport.net. We trust you've been helped by the information our host, Jon Uhler, has shared. To donate to this ministry, schedule a personal consultation with Jon, or to arrange a professional training for your church or organization with Jon, simply visit our website. On behalf of Survivor Support, we look forward to hearing from you and to have you join us next time on Journey to Healing.